people have this idea about who the Father is that he's just upset with us all the time. That's not the case. So I grew up in a Catholic family. We were committed Saturday nighters, went to church every Saturday night. Me and my brothers were altar boys and went through all the sacraments, and even we prayed Hail Mary, and I remember at different times I wanted to know who God was, and so I would do things that I felt that would honour him and in a way of pursuing him, but I had no relationship with him. It was a very much a distant religious kind of way of relating to God. So it was not personal at all. So, but I remember just before I was 16, I got invited to go to a Pentecostal church and to do an assignment for school. And I remember having an encounter with God. I must have had an encounter with God there, because I remember from that time until I was just after I got my license, I remember sitting at our home church and this gnawing feeling of like, I know there's something more than this. And it was like this kind of frustration of like, I know there's something out there that I'm missing. And so when I got my license, I started going back. I went out to that church again that I'd gone to a bit over 12 months earlier, and gave my life to God. And it really set in motion being surrounded in this community of people that really loved God and were hungry for him and had a relationship with him. Was the catalyst for me getting to know the Father the way I know him now. There was obviously many moments along the way of encounter and revelation where I guess it's like building blocks where you're building one by one on your relationship with God. And
what was it your views of God like when you were in the Catholic Church? Who was he?
Probably distant, and probably didn't want to get too close to him, because we were taught that you had to do all these things to get to God, and I guess there was this kind of innocence, because in the Catholic Church we believe that in a way that you could live a life, your life like in a certain way, and then as long as you went to reconciliation at some point, maybe it was every year, or you went to confessional for some people, that God forgave your sin. And there wasn't this redemptive idea of freedom, but there was this idea of the forgiveness of God. And I think that's something that I guess is really powerful, though, is that idea that regardless of what I've done, the Father will always have me back. But yeah, it was very much a servant-master kind of relationship, not a son relationship that Jesus talks about that we can have, where he says the slaves don't know what the master's doing, but the sons do.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's he like now for you, like knowing that he's a father and you're a son rather than a slave, God to be feared?
Yeah, it's wild. It's I always wanted a perfect father. And I don't know if anyone else has that kind of longing, but I always was looking for a perfect father, and that journey at searching continued. Often I would look for it in people, and it was only something that I feel like I've come to a greater revelation of in recent times. I can see, even since I got saved, I was still looking for that perfect relationship. So I'd put a lot of pressure on people to become that, because my intimacy with God wasn't as deep as what it could be. I didn't know him as well as I could. And but as I got closer to him, he revealed those insecurities, and really just showed me that I can have that relationship with him, because it's unreasonable to expect people to be there for you all the time, but the Father can be there all the time. You know, he's not that, he's not a distant Father. He's not that, you don't have to make an appointment to talk to him.
Do you have an example or a time when, that actually you realised that, how close he was?
I definitely have had many encounters with him over the course of my walk with him. But for ages they didn't. They would be an encounter in the moment, or for kind of like do the whole mountain valley thing. It's like, oh, you have this amazing encounter with him, and then because you don't know how to steward it, you start like going down. You don't know how to continue that. You don't know how to cultivate that relationship. I would sort of start going back down the hill again, and I walked into, this is my third year doing a Bible college, and I remember after the first year, my heart desire going into the first year was that I wanted this unbroken fellowship with the Father. And I remember getting to the end of first year and I was like, oh man, this is actually possible. It's not a pipe dream, it's actually possible. And so that was definitely that revelation of like, oh, I can actually have that. It's like the whole building blocks thing. It's like, oh, you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, you're walking in the promise almost. It's like, but there's been a series of events that have happened to lead up to that point of revelation almost. Yeah.
Do you want to briefly share any of those points, or?
I don't know what they are. It's like, I can't think of any right now. I just know that I just had a bunch of encounters with him. And I also actually sought out a lot of counselling, particularly in the first year of Bible college, and kind of like counselling, mentorship, whatever you want to call it. It's like, I think counselling gets a bad rap, and but really it's just like this person has an idea of what freedom looks like and is able to invite you into that. So I'm a huge advocate of like that, like mentoring, counselling, whatever you want to call it. It's like family, like fellowship kind of thing, that kind of where we help each other up. And so the constant question that the counsellor would ask me was, what is God saying? And I'd be like, I don't know what he's saying. And she'd say, what is he saying? And I was like, I don't know, because I'm getting all the feels, whatever the thing is at the time that you're worked up about. And she goes, he's speaking to you, what is he saying? What's the first thing that's coming to your mind? And I was like, this. And she'd be like, yes, that's the voice of the Lord. And like time and time again, she would do that. And until one day, I think it was at the end of that year, I realized, oh, I can like have this chat with the Father on my own, so that was quite significant, actually.
Yeah, big revelation.
Yeah, and it opened up this whole like possibility of receiving so much more healing and freedom in my own time with the Father, and almost this window into his heart that he's not after our works. He's not after our good deeds. He's not after us doing all these things for him. You know, he's not like got his list out in heaven saying, you know, son, today this is what I need you to do for me, for me to be happy even. You know, for you to be a good Christian but it's this, he just wants a relationship. And our fruitfulness or our expressions of our love for him is the most transformative when it comes from that place of simple intimacy and just connection with the Father. Otherwise it's kind of manufactured, and I've definitely done that in the past. You know, I think evangelism's like a real common one for particularly the circles that I was in, and you know, there was many times where I didn't share God's heart for people. It was not out of a place of love, like genuine, I guess, connection with him. It was like this idea of like, oh, I need to do this, almost this pressure to share his love, or you know, share God's heart for people. I needed to do that because that's what we're supposed to do as Christians. And it's like this, there's just a deeper revelation than being forced to act a particular way. There's this genuine opportunity to just act out of love, just as almost a reaction to like you're receiving the Father like in such a deep way. It's like you can't contain it, but to give it out, and I guess it comes out of the overflow of your heart then, rather than this. You know, you need to be out there doing the things. I was even thinking. I was reading in my journal. I don't journal tons, but I just happened to like write a couple of things down the other day, and I read something that I wrote down like 3 months ago. And I felt like God said this day that something about, oh, I just want you to love people today, something like that. And so I went to the servo, and the service station, and got some fuel, and a lady come out to me as I was fueling up, and she's like, oh, like, you've got to hang a thing up. You've got to like put the bowser up. You've got to, otherwise, you've got to give it 8 seconds or something, or you didn't pick it up quick enough or something like that. She was a bit frazzled because she thought the pump wasn't working. So she's like, you got to hang it up and you got to do it this way next time. And I was like, oh no, it's working. And she's like, oh, is it? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, oh, sorry. It's fine. I don't know what happened there. Sorry, it's all right. And so I kept like pumping fuel, and then went inside and paid for it. And I don't know, I just felt God's heart for her. And I had in my mind to tell her that God loved her or something like that, but I didn't. And I was on my way home, and I was like, oh, like, God, I don't know, like, I feel like I might have missed you, you know, did the wrong thing in like not telling her that you love her. That wasn't, I didn't feel like I was being obedient to what he told me to do. And he's like, yes, you did. You did what I said. You loved her by not freaking out at her and like, you know, being annoyed with her. Like, what are you talking to me? You know, why are you like having a go at me about doing something wrong? Because that's something that in the past, like, I've definitely got triggered over, like people like being like, well, you're not doing this right, or you're stuffed up, or, but he's like, and I realized like so many times, as Christians, I'm like, or as a Christian for me, I'm like, I just have missed these opportunities just to be in love, and I've entered into this like frustration or I've just missed God's heart for people. It's not even that I didn't evangelize, it's just that I didn't have his heart for them. And I got frustrated with people. It's like sometimes I think our interactions with people, however overt they are or covert they are, can impart this love of God to people that communicates that God's here. God hasn't abandoned the world. And I think if we can almost like take evangelism off this pedestal of like standing on a street corner with a microphone, or telling everyone that Jesus loves them and praying for everyone that's in sight, and almost just be kind to the people around us, even when they're not super kind, or they're like misunderstood your heart or whatever. Like that's sowing seeds of God's love, and that stuff changes the way people perceive God, particularly once they find out you're a Christian, right? Because I think a lot of people have this view of God, that God's very upset with them all the time and very frustrated with what they're doing. And that frustration and that disappointment keeps them away. It's like, if you want someone to stay away from you, like, get disappointed with them enough and like communicate that you're frustrated with them all the time. Like that'll cause a lot of division and separation in relationship. And I think that's what people have this idea about who the Father is that he's just upset with us all the time. That's not the case. So I think that actually also liberated me from this like condemnation and this pressure to like do the signs and wonders and stuff and prove my love for God, when I can just love people out of the overflow of my relationship with Him, which sometimes looks like praying for people and sometimes looks like very overt acts of God. But that doesn't come from a place of fear and like needing to prove. It's actually like Satan in the wilderness with Jesus. When Jesus went to the wilderness, he's like, prove that you're the Son of God. Show it off. And then even like the religious leaders and stuff said that later on, like, prove that you're the Son of God by showing us these miracles. And he said no. It's like every time that I read, he said no. So I think I'm learning, like, when I get like worked up about something and I'm feeling like this fear about whatever it might be, it's like, I'm very driven and often have felt like the need to perform and to be doing something to be bettering my life, or doing something productive, and so with that kind of mindset, the most irresponsible thing out on the outside that you can do is actually sit and spend time with the Father.
True.
Because it looks just, it's like in the natural sense, it's like the least productive thing is to sit and do nothing. But really, like, you're actually choosing something better. You're making a choice in the midst of that fear and that even the guilt or whatever it might be, to put Him first, to put your Father first and your relationship with Him first, because that feeling often of fear is a sign that the Bible says you haven't been perfected in love. And the only way to be perfected in love is to spend time with the Father, who is love. It's 1 John 4.
Yeah, it's good, bro. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Bless you all.